mentor of mine said this to me, and I've always kept this in mind. He said, your best talent, you haven't even hired yet. Your best talent is in the future. And so let's run a thought experiment for a second. Everybody who's listening to this has that one teammate who's just an absolute stud, hopefully. If you don't, I'm sorry for you. But at least one person on your team is pretty good. If you had 10 of those people, would you be able to make way more money? The answer is almost always unequivocally, yes, I'd be able to make way more money. And so then the follow-up is, then why is all of your attention not to getting more of those people? If you listen to the Steve Jobs, the Bezoses, the Bill Gateses, Elons, so many of them, Zuckerberg, so many of them talk about talent. And in the early days of entrepreneurship, I thought that they were trying to hide the secrets. But it's really that they were talking about what they were focused on now. And as I continue to do business, the more I just care about who rather than what or how. Because if you really do have the right who, you're one hire away from somebody who's 100 times smarter than you, who's done this way longer than you have, who can help you grow the business. I'll give you this story that really drove this home. So when we were looking at selling Gym Launch, we had a lot of conversations with investment bankers, and then finally we picked an investment bank to represent us. And then we had a lot of conversations with prospective buyers. So acquirers, meaning people who like fund managers, people who have big funds of money who buy companies for a living. And I remember a moment on one of the first of these meetings where it was in person, they'd flown out, and all of their team was on one side and all of my team was on the other. And I was sitting at the head and the managing partner was at the other side of the table. And I just remember just kind of sitting there silently, looking down the table, looking at both sides, back and forth, and being like, no wonder these guys are going to make $3 billion in the next 5 years versus my team. And the thing is, to be clear, it wasn't that my team was bad. I mean, we built a $100 million plus business. I saw the discrepancy. This is not a slight to anybody on the team. We obviously had stars, but seeing the average level of talent on their team versus mine was a huge moment for me to understand just how important people are. And so there's a story in Google, I think it was Larry Page or Sergey Brin, whoever, typed into Google, like parachutes, whatever. And the ads that came up were for like, buy a radio, buy a car. And he screenshotted it and he puts it on the corkboard in the engineering room and said, these ads suck. And he just wrote it on the screenshot and he hit the board and he walked out of the room. And the story goes that the next night, one of the developers just like stayed up all night and came up with AdSense. And AdSense more closely paired what people were searching for with the ads that they were shown. He didn't say, here's the 100-step process that we're going to do to solve this problem. He just said, you guys are intelligent. This is the problem. Go fix it. And so one of the telltale signs that you have bad people on your team or people who are too dumb or your standards are too low is that you have stupid rules. And I'm somebody who's done this. So this isn't me preaching here. This is something that I've now realized is that if you have to have a rule that's like, hey, everybody, you have to show up on time. Hey, don't drink while you're on the job. Hey, like you can't watch Netflix while you're working. Like that's not a good thing. By the way, all of these are rules that I have implemented at some time in a business that I've owned. And I'm telling you this now because it seems so painfully obvious that if I have to say, don't watch Netflix while you're on a customer service call with a customer, that shouldn't be a rule. That should be an obvious thing that anyone with half a brain cell can figure out. But what that really meant is that if you start making stupid rules, it's because your standards are too low and you're hiring stupid people. Rule number 4, lots of rules mean you have dumb people. So let's talk about that for a second. So one of the things to prevent against this is a rule from Amazon, which is that every person you hire, you want to raise the average bar of the team that they're getting hired into. I literally used this yesterday with someone that we were interviewing. Layla was like, what do you think about this person? I said, well, do they raise the bar of the team? And he was like, I was like, all right, well then there's our answer. Because the thing is that all companies will, unless controlled for, dilute down talent. So people, 6s will hire 5s, 5 will hire 4s, 4s will hire 3s, and people will always hire people that they're not threatened from because they want security first. And so you have to implement something like this because the reverse can also be true. Imagine if every single time you hired somebody, it raised the bar of the team, then the team will just continue to get better and better and smarter people, and the company will grow and grow and grow. And I have a fundamental belief that the level of a business grows kind of like a Christmas tree where you've got the number and intelligence of brains that goes up. So if you have lots and lots and lots of really intelligent brains, the size of this business is huge. If you only have one brain that's intelligent and everyone underneath of that has a subset of the skills of that one brain, then it's only one brain that's competing against companies that have 100 smart brains. And that was something that in my early days, every person I hired, I could do their job better than them, and I trained them to do everything they did, which meant the limit of the business was me. I had to literally keep learning things, which you always have to do, of course, but I had to learn everything from scratch. And so the business then had to suffer what a day one customer success rep would deal with because I didn't know anything about customer success. And so the idea is I would rather bring someone in who has 10 years of experience in customer success so that we can start the business on year 10 of customer success. I want that person to have learned all those lessons on someone else's dollar. And then when they come to me, have all those lessons so I don't need the scars. And so one of the telltale signs also of an early company is that you've got people who have zero experience in leadership roles for a function they've never done before. And that's because it's like, well, this is my COO, Sarah. We have 5 people in our company, but she's our COO. It's like, don't use the term COO because she's going to look at salary.com and she's going to say that she should make more than the entire company makes in revenue, right? No, that's not the case. Like, she's a manager, right? And realistically, she probably doesn't manage the whole business. She probably just manages this portion of it, or he just manages a portion of it. And so the thing is like, just because it's your mom or it's your brother or your best friend growing up or that guy who you hired first and has been with you since the beginning, it still doesn't mean that they're right for the role. And so this is where a lot of the money that you want to make is on the other side of a few hard conversations, and many people never have them. They're willing to just accept mediocrity at the point of the bottleneck and never get debottlenecked because they can't say, hey, Sarah, I don't think it's working out, and I think it's my fault because I put you in a position without the resources to win. And I think, and this is how I manage it. What I want to do is I want to keep investing in you. And here's how I want to do it. I want to bring someone in who has a ton of experience, who knows more than both of us put together. And I'm going to basically pay for you to learn from this person so that you can become more skilled in your career. And then I want you to get laser focused on this thing over here that you were doing before and absolutely tune it up. And so this way, you're going to crush what you're currently doing every day, and it's absolutely within your scope and experience that I think you can do really well with it. And I also want to build out your future by bringing this person in. So think about it like me paying $100,000 a year for you to learn from somebody who has 10 years of experience. It's about the biggest gift I can give you. And so if you frame it like that, it's not like this is a demotion or like you suck. It's like, I'm trying to invest in you, and I'm going to invest in you by bringing this person in who's going to teach you. Now, if that person has an ego, which is usually the next common thing, which is like, well, I thought I was doing great, then it means you probably have a communication issue. Like, you're not telling them that Sarah's not doing a good job. And then Sarah gets upset. And the thing is at that point, Sarah might have an ego because she started at the front line and then became a manager. Then you gave her another title progression too fast. And to be really clear, I've done this 2 times with executive assistants, just with the executive assistant within the companies a zillion times. So me personally, I've done this, and I don't really even deal with a lot of personnel in general. And it's like, I promoted someone too fast. I think it's the Peter principle, which is that people will advance to their point of incompetency. And so someone does really well at sales, and so then you put them in a sales manager, and then they've never managed a sales team, and they don't do really well at that, but they get promoted to their point of incompetence. So I lost a good salesperson, and I got a bad sales manager. And this is how most of corporations are run. People do well, and then their role changes into something they've never done before, and then they do poorly, and they get stuck there or they get fired. And most times, because the person who promoted them feels bad, they just get stuck there. And so you've got all these people who you still have positive associations with the work that they did, and you feel like you owe them because they did do a good job one time before, but now they're doing a poor job because they're not properly equipped and you didn't give them the skills to succeed, and they don't have the experience. And yes, that's your fault. But the thing is you can't fire you because you own the company. So somebody's got to go. And so either you got to move them aside, you redefine the role and move someone ahead of them, or you have to get rid of them. And again, this is what makes business hard. It's not that it's complicated. It's that you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And I get that. That's what makes hard conversations hard. If you hate somebody, firing them is very easy, right? Like, if someone stole from you, firing is not personal experience there. I slept fine that night, all right? It's the conversation with someone that you know is trying their best, that you really like as a human being, but isn't cutting it. And even if you think you could get them there, you're not willing to invest the resource to do it because it doesn't make sense. I could wait for someone to learn neurosurgery, and I think people could, but it might take a decade. And I don't know if I really want to invest all that time when I could just go find a neurosurgeon. And yeah, I might have to pay more, but I'd rather pay that than pay 10 years. And so to loop this back around to the story that I was talking with the private equity firms when I was looking at them, one of the big obvious things too is that many of the people on the other side of the table were making $1 million, $2 million, $5 million a year. And, people who were in their 20s making $300,000, $500,000 a year. And I was like, okay, I need to reset my bar of what I have to compensate in order to attract A-level talent. And once I really understood the value of people, the way that we grew businesses completely changed. It stopped being about building businesses and became way more about assembling the teams that build the business. Like one of the core functions we do at acquisition.com, probably the thing that we invest the most resources into is recruiting talent. Like there's a reason that we go really hard on LinkedIn because people respond to our messages and we're like, hey, you ran all the ads at this $200 million per year direct-to-consumer business. We have a direct-to-consumer business that's at 20 million. Would you be willing to take it from 20 to 200 because we think you have the experience, or do you know anybody who does? And because we have a following there, we get the responses and we can get that level talent. But that level talent's not coming in for $100,000 a year. You can moan all you want that, oh, these employees want so much money, but there's a marketplace. There's a rate. And if you're not willing to pay it, there's a company that is smarter than you that is willing to pay it because they know the return on it. And I still think to this day, one of the biggest arbitrage that exists in business is paying a talent, a wages to get 10x the output. So let me drive this home. So you can get a B player. Let's use $100,000 as the baseline. So I want to hire a role for $100,000 for this thing. And a B player in the role will take 80. And a B plus might take 90 or 100. But there might be an A plus guy who's like 170. And it's like, whoa, that's like twice our budget for this role. But if that guy or gal has the output, like an A player can get you 5x, 10x the output of a B player, meaning 5 people who are B players at $100,000 a year equal 1 A plus at 170. That's still a great return and better than hiring 5 Bs. And especially in knowledge work. So if you have anything that has to do with thinking and not like where literally more hands are required to do the work, the outsized return on intelligence is so high that I still see it as one of the fundamental arbitrage that exists in business. How much time you save by hiring somebody who knows exactly what to do, how it drives revenue in the business, and they can use 10 years of experience that you don't have to pay. So I would rather pay 25%, 30% more for somebody, 50% more for somebody who can move me 10 years forward. Like it seems almost silly when you frame it like that not to. But the thing is, every day, small business owners want to save $5,000 on an annual salary for somebody who they know is perfect for the job. Business truth number 5, if you want to get bigger, get better. Better leads to growth, bigger leads to bloat. So I was reading Esther Cathy's book, Wealth, Is It Worth It? And he talks about the story of Chick-fil-A. And he said that his number one pursuit was better, not bigger. And that he believed that if they were better and they just kept getting better, he said, our customers will demand that we get bigger versus trying to get bigger for the sake of getting bigger. And so he tells a story between him, Chick-fil-A, and Boston Market. So for those who don't know, Boston Market was actually a very big chain when I was growing up that grew really, really quickly. And so Chick-fil-A was, privately held. They took on almost no debt. They grew really responsibly, one location at a time. And Boston Market was like, we're going to franchise and we're going to raise a ton of money from Wall Street and we're going to make all this stuff. And for a period of years, they outgrew Chick-fil-A by a mile. And they were like, oh, Chick-fil-A is going to get left in the dust. They're going to get out-competed. They're going to get crushed. But because Boston Market grew so quickly, because they diluted their talent because they had to hire so many bodies and not enough brains. And because they wanted to grow, because they wanted valuations, they wanted money, they were what I would consider mercenaries. Whereas Chick-fil-A and Esther Cathy was a missionary. He believed in the product. He believed in the experience. And because he's a faith-driven entrepreneur, he wanted his restaurant to represent the tenets of Christ. This isn't me getting religious about it, but he believed in his mission. That's the point. And Bezos talks about this. He said, you've got mercenaries, you got missionaries. And the missionaries always win in the long term. And so what ended up happening is that the money guys, some of these guys cashed out early because stock got inflated, all this stuff, they took on tons of debt. And then the company ended up bankrupting, I don't know, something like 10 years later. But guess what happened in that period of time? Chick-fil-A just kept growing. And the thing is that Boston Market couldn't outcompete Chick-fil-A in their market. They just grew faster. But the thing is that if you've got a Boston Market and Chick-fil-A, if you know that your chicken sandwich is better, you still always win. It becomes an inevitability. It doesn't matter if they get there first. If you win in the end, who cares? Because quality will always win, provided it's priced appropriately and things like that. But better leads to bigger. Bigger leads to bloat. And so this has been something that was really very hard for me to learn as an entrepreneur, because we like them. I mean, I like the feedback of how much money are we making this month. I want to make sure it goes up. I want to make sure it goes up, because that it's a proxy for growth. Okay. And I used to say this, and I like it, which is either the business is growing or I am. So if the business isn't growing or the business is going down, I'm growing. I'm learning what I'm messing up. And if the business is growing, sometimes you're not learning, because you're getting rewarded for the work that you did while you were learning, while you're eating shit. Sometimes you get both, and that's the ideal thing, is that it's growing and you continue to learn, and you keep your learnings ahead of the growth. So the train's coming and you're building out the track, you're getting around the ditches, you're going through the mountain, you're digging the hole, you're doing that stuff so the train can keep running and keep growing. A big lesson that I've taken from Esther Kathy and some of the best entrepreneurs like Elon, if you're going to enter a market, so Elon talks about this, if you're going to enter a new marketplace, you want to be an order of magnitude better than the existing solutions. And so I'll give you an example Elon just recently did. He talked about getting into candy or chocolate, which you might think, why would he even bother getting into that? I think it's because he had a gripe with Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, which is really sad because I like both of them. He had a little bit of a rift with them. He was like, well, fine, I'll take out these candies. And so he was like, I'm going to get into chocolate. And so he had all these people send him different recipes and all this stuff, and he decided not to do it. And the reason he decided not to do it is he said that there was no product, there was no version of chocolate or candies that was an order of magnitude better than what already existed. So he just didn't want to play. If you think about how he entered each of the other markets, he got into space and was like, oh, we're going to redefine how space flight works. We're going to use reusable things and we're going to drive down costs 10x compared to the competition. That's an order of magnitude better. With cars, the first real Tesla, not the Roadster, the high-end one, but the first one he made for mass commercial use, was literally the highest rated car that Auto Magazine, the premium magazine, had ever rated. It got the highest overall score of all time because he focused so much on making an order of magnitude better. And the thing is that Tesla makes great cars by and large. And so customers have demanded they get bigger because they continue to outpurchase their supply. And so that forces supply to increase. So you grow. And so if you're stuck and you're like, I keep trying to grow and I can't grow, sometimes you just have to think, let's not grow. What if we didn't want to grow at all, but we just had to make this thing absolutely insane from a quality perspective? Just get better. And the way that you do this tactically is that you look at each function of the business and you say, what's one thing we can do better? That we absolutely, very high confidence, like we're just going to go from contacting our leads within 30 minutes to 5 minutes. That's the one thing we're going to do for the next 12 weeks for sales. For marketing, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that every single ad has a hook that's been tested before. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure every ad that goes out is going to have a hook that's tested, and we're going to make 5 times more of them. Great. That's what we're doing in marketing. And every single one of them, here's the key point, is that once you start that one thing, the next quarter, you add to that. You don't just swap it, and this is what most people do. They do that one thing, and then they forget what they were doing. Is that you end up creating this checklist of what creates amazing ads. You create this checklist of what makes amazing follow-up. You make this checklist of what makes an amazing handoff between sales and customer success. You make this checklist of how to activate a customer. And so it's 100 golden BBs, not one silver bullet, that creates the outsized returns. And then once you have 100 golden BBs, you start getting the word of mouth. You start getting people who keep buying from you. And then all of a sudden your LTV skyrockets. And then you might find out if your LTV skyrockets, maybe you don't have a marketing problem. Maybe you just weren't making enough per customer. And I can tell you this, the amount of times I talk to smart businesses who are like, we need cheaper leads. We need cheaper leads. We need to lower our CAC. The reality is they just don't make enough per customer because they're not that good. And either you're mispriced, which does happen for sure, or your thing's not that good, which is 100% under your control. Fundamentally, growth is a lagging indicator. The things you do to create growth are the leading indicators. And the things that create growth are the things that make you better. And so having growth as a desired behavior is trying to make an outcome into an input. And then what happens is you have, quote, growth for growth's sake. And here's the problem with this, just as a big picture, is that if the reason that you're in business is to, quote, make money, if that's your real mission, so many things make money. And so what happens is you become distracted as an entrepreneur. This is why the mercenaries fail compared to the missionaries. Because if you just want to make the best chicken sandwich, anything that's not a chicken sandwich isn't a priority. They could have Chick-fil-A credit cards, right? Or Chick-fil-A miles. They could do that stuff and they probably would make the money. It's not core. Now, we'll go find out if they probably have a credit card. Who knows? But like the point is that it's not core to what they know. If money is the goal, then there are so many paths to getting there that it's difficult to stay focused, which is why companies get spread thin, which is why they grow for growth's sake. And then all of a sudden they have 5 initiatives that are going on that all aren't working that well because they couldn't focus on the thing that mattered most, which is getting better at the core promise that they make to customers. Business truth number 6. You work all day, but you can't get anything done because you allow too many things that don't matter to distract you. Sometimes you have to let fires burn. And so what that means is that you have to block time for work that moves the ball forward, because a month later, it'll be the only thing you have to show for the month before. And so one of the things that took me a long time to realize is that there are very few things that are existential crisis within hours, even within minutes, right? And so the idea that everyone in the company and all of your customers, et cetera, can have immediate demand from you or responses from you as the owner is not a good expectation, because then it means that you're on demand for everyone else's needs, but the business needs you. And so I'll give you a story to drive this home. So at my first gym, I had just started sleeping not at my gym, which was wonderful for me. And so right as I get my first few nights of sleep, I get a call that everybody hates at 5:30 in the morning, because that's when sessions happen. And I was like, hello, what's going on? And he said, I've got bad news. And I immediately go to, someone died from a heart attack in our gym. That was immediately went there. And I'm just silent. And I was like, what is it? And then he says, there's a water pipe that broke and it's leaking on the floor. And I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? And he's like, well, I don't know what to do. So I called you. And I said, well, what do you think I'm going to do? He's like, I guess call a plumber. And I was like, okay, what would I do in the meantime? He's like, probably get a bucket. I was like, yeah. I was like, have you done that? He was like, well, no, I called you. I was like, okay, well, why don't you do those first 2 things? Because there's nothing I can do. There's a story of Eleanor Roosevelt, I think, when I think someone in her family died in the middle of the night. She gets woken up by her servant or whatever, however they did it back then. And he says, Mrs. Roosevelt, I have some terrible news. And it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And she's like, what is it? He's like, your cousin, John died. And she said, that could have waited till morning. There's nothing I can do about it. And so there's very few things that will actually kill a business. And so if you allow everything to be urgent, it means that everything's a priority, which means